The Iraq of today is associated with horrific violence, a refugee crisis, and widespread poverty. The only images we see flashed across the news show nothing but terror and misery. But it hasn't always been this way. Modern-day Iraq lies in the Fertile Crescent of Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization where mankind once flourished, as it developed seed cultivation and its first farming techniques, all nourished by the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Now, generations of people have tilled and turned the soil there since 8000 BC, developing the seeds that grow into the many types of wheat used around the world today. But centuries of cultivation turned to dust just in 2003 when President George Bush invaded the country, planting seeds of war that would be sown for years to come. Unfortunately, the United States took more than figurative seeds to Iraq. While more than 2 million civilians were killed as a result of the US invasion there, the Iraq War is ingrained in the American psyche as a humanitarian effort to save the Iraqi people from a brutal dictator. But what it actually did was pave the way for foreign corporations to descend upon the country and turn a profit on the chaos. Now, following the United States bombing of Iraq and its capture of Saddam Hussein, a coalition provisional authority was established to serve as the temporary government of Iraq. Now, the CPA was headed by Paul Bremer, the former managing director of Kissinger Associates, the influential consulting firm of Henry Kissinger, the former Secretary of State and war criminal. However, it quickly became clear that toppling Saddam wasn't the only goal. The powers taking control of the Iraqi government were also seeking control of the country's historic agriculture industry. Now, in 2004, Bremer put into effect the first 100 orders. They were binding instructions or directives to the Iraqi people that create penal consequences or have a direct bearing on the way Iraqis are regulated, including changes to Iraqi law. Now, in other words, Iraqis were told, follow our orders or die. Now, one order in particular had a crippling effect on Iraq's centuries-long farming and seed cultivation traditions. Order 81, which granted those holding the patents on certain plant varieties absolute rights over the use of their seeds in Iraq for 20 years. Not only that, but it facilitated the introduction and domination of imported high-priced corporate seeds, mainly from the US. Seeds which neither reproduce nor give yield without their prescribed chemical fertilizer and pesticide inputs. Now, this created a major dilemma for Iraqi farmers, as Najma Siddiqui wrote in 2012. It meant that the majority of farmers who had never spent money on seed and inputs that came free from nature would henceforth have to heavily invest in corporate inputs and equipment or go into debt to obtain them, or accept lowered profits or give up farming altogether. Meanwhile, the country's national seed bank, located unfortunately in the infamous town of Abu Ghraib that housed a US military torture site, was destroyed by the 2003 invasion and subsequent looting, another casualty of the Iraq War. Now today, because of Order 81, Iraqi farmers who choose to plant patented seeds from the multinational agribusiness monopolies that rule over them, they have to sign agreements that they will pay a technology fee and an annual license fee. Now, if an Iraqi farmer saves seeds to replant them in the future, as farmers around the world have done for centuries, they're subject to substantial fines from the seed supplier. Ultimately, Order 81 and companies like Monsanto and Cargill have ensured that while Iraqis may no longer be under the thumb of Saddam Hussein, they are trapped in a modern colonial struggle against an occupying force that seeks to control their livelihoods, their food supply, and their cultural traditions. Perhaps this should come as no surprise considering Paul Bremer's ties to Henry Kissinger. Indeed, it was Kissinger who reportedly once said, "Control oil and you control nations, control food and you control the people." Now, this type of control over agriculture and food production is a weapon of war, a tool of the oppressor. The US has been using food aid and its role in global food production to advance its own interests since World War I. During the post-war trade regime, aka the Nixon administration, trade pacts like the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade emerged to advance a new global agribusiness export agenda. Within a decade, the global food cartel was controlled by the US NATO empire's most elite families. They started buying up all of the world's major sources of food and seeds. And that's why just a few companies, including Monsanto and Cargill, dominate the world's grain and cereal supplies. It's also why these companies descended to prey upon Iraq once the Coalition Provisional Authority created an opening, destroying a once flourishing agriculture industry. Now, in the process, they destroyed the independence of Iraqi farmers and forced the Iraqi people to rely on foreign corporations for even basic sustenance. Now, here to talk more about these struggles of the Iraqi agriculture sector during and after the Iraq War, and what the Iraqi government is doing now to rebuild the industry is Dr. Nakt Altameemi. Altameemi started his career in Iraq's Ministry of Agriculture and eventually served as Director General of both Iraq's State Board for Seed Testing and Certification and the Mesopotamia Seed Company. From 2008 to 2015, he joined the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization as a consultant. Check it out. Dr. Tamimi, thank you so much for joining me today. After decades of economic sanctions and occupation by the United States, Iraq continues until today to face a number of struggles that impact all branches of society. One of the biggest areas, of course, is agriculture. What can you tell us about the fertile history of Iraq's agriculture sector?
It is well known that Iraq, known as Mesopotamia, the land between two rivers, or the dark land, where the central and south part of Iraq was covered by date palm orchards, and the Iraqi was self-sufficient in agricultural production. For example, even in 60s, Iraq was exporting wheat, where the inhabitants was 7 million. But in 70s and 80s, the agriculture get a deterioration due to the capitalized policy taken by the government, and also the bad impact of the Iranian-Iraqi war on the funding for the agriculture sector. These are before the Gulf War, 1991 sanction, and the 2003 war. So I can say the agriculture was in good manner, providing the Iraqi people with their need of food. And beside the production, also the government was spent a lot of funds on importing the requirement to feed the demand of the food for Iraqi people. I can give you some example on the contribution of agriculture output to the GDP. In 1980, it was 5.7%, and this is increased in 1989 up to 13.7%, the contribution of agricultural output in the GDP, and reached 32.1%, and that's in 2000, and 32% represented the highest level of agriculture efficiency among Arab countries. That's during up to 2012.
Right, and I know that you obviously have the numbers ready to talk about the financial and trade embargo enforced against Iraq from 1990 to at least 2013. How did these sanctions and ongoing war impact Iraq's agriculture and farming industry?
As I said, the Iraqi was getting the self-sufficiency in vegetable, that's before the sanction, in vegetable, fruit, milk, since the imported quantity of these commodities were constitute only about 6% of the total demand, which it means nothing. And the cereal production was about constitute about 60% of the total demand, and the rest was being imported from abroad. After 1991, the war resulted in destruction of the most of the infrastructure, and also the sanction imposed on Iraq to prevent Iraq from importing many of inputs, particularly for agriculture, which is lead to bad impact production and also resulted in low productivity. The combination of the war, poor government policies, and the economic section brought the sector nearly to collapse. The section followed 1991 war reduced the Iraqi gross domestic production by 80%. The decline in agricultural productivity was sharp during this period because Iraq was not allowed to and spare parts. In addition, Iraqi's purchasing power dropped dramatically in low effective demand for all products, including food crops. The sanction actually, when preventing the importing the required need, particularly for the imports, for example, seeds, fertilizer, plant protects material, that's affect the productivity, which is going down. For a report published by FAO and World Food Program WFP in 1997 indicated that the production was decreased. And after 1995, when the Iraqi government signed the agreement, Oil for Food, seeing some increment in the productivity. For example, yield for wheat increased from nearly 800 kilogram per hectare in 1995 to up to nearly 1 ton per hectare in 1996. And for example, other example, rice increased from 1.8 ton per hectare to about 2.3 ton per hectare during the same period. And we found that the Oil for Food program has helped the agriculture where their allocation of budget, which used by the Ministry of Agriculture, to make available for the farmers the inputs required for the agricultural production. And also the policy used by the government at that time to subsidize all the prices, particularly for the machines, seeds, and fertilizer. And the subsidization is up to 95%, which is, this is benefits for the farmer to get their need from the market and resume their production.
Now, Dr. Necht, can you tell me a little bit more about the actual foreign corporations and maybe even foreign nations that are influencing the Iraqi agriculture sector? Has the government even done anything to stymie this kind of influence?
You know, after 2003, I can summarize to you the situation for the agriculture sector. First of all, in May and April 2003, there was a lot of looting, which resulted most of the agriculture building and infrastructure destroyed. This is a bad thing. Also, the irrigation system and drainage system had not been maintained and damaged. The canal network also been corrupted and substantially damaged. Seed supply system also been deteriorated. This was very strong system in Iraq before 2003, but unfortunately been badly deteriorated after 2003. From about 15 million heads livestock to about 9.7 million head of livestock. Orchards also were neglected and not maintained. Machinery was in very sorry state. And before 2003, the Ministry of Agriculture has support farmers to provide them with modern irrigation system, particularly for sprinkler irrigation or drip irrigation. Most of these equipment, which is sold to the farmer in subsidized price, were either looted or taken, sold outside of Iraqi border, unfortunately. Spare parts were very scarce in the central south central and south of Iraq, were become saline, and the health care for the livestock were in very low level. All these affected the agriculture production, and also the security situation after 2003 were not allowed the farmer to practice the agriculture in their field. The electricity, the power is not available. This is much affected on particularly the pumps and drainage, and also the fuel is not available or very high prices. All these factors has badly impact the agriculture production, at least for 2003, 2004. The violent in 2007 and 8. All these has bad impact on the agriculture.
And I want to talk more about the Iraqi government that's in place right now. What are they doing exactly to lessen the damaging effects of Iraq's decimated agriculture sector? I mean, has there really been any improvement in the past 5 to 10 years?
Unfortunately, yes, there are a little of reconstruction for the infrastructure. But the government, as I mentioned, after 2003, all the agriculture buildings being looted. For example, I was working with the State Board for Seed Testing and Certification. You can't believe me, I found even the marble or being taken, the windows being taken, the doors being taken, all the laboratory equipments being taken. Even we have a small library being burned. So you can imagine the damage, how the damage. This is really in 2003, 2004. This has been all rehabilitated. And, this is to take time to resume on the road. But for a huge project for agriculture, this is not done yet. But several organizations like FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization, had very good involved in implementing projects. These projects regarding seeds, livestock, horticulture, even for policy, rehabilitate the policy. 14 were ISIS taking about 40% of Iraqi territory from Mosul to Salah ad-Din to Al-Anbar. This has also affected the agriculture, where most of the budget directed to support the war expensive. and there was a lot of budget cut in the agriculture budget allocation, which is affected really the agriculture sector. Also, this is crisis, the ISIS crisis, had impact on the production of the food. You know, Nainawa and Salahuddin, Kirkuk, and Anbar represent about 40% of the total production of the wheat, which is the main and most important commodities for the food consumption in Iraq. And this is, for example, the total production before ISIS reach about 500,000 and sometimes up to 1 million ton. In 2014, 2015, only about 79 tons were produced in that governorate. This is highly affects the requirement of the wheat for Iraqi people. And at the same time, you know, this armed conflict, has bad impact on the irrigation system, network irrigation system in the area. You know, the main river is Tigris and Euphrates. The Tigris coming from Turkey through Nainawa, and also affecting, there are a lot of irrigation projects in that area are badly damaged, and even the irrigation pump station also damaged. So this is need a lot of efforts to reconstruct it again, and this is cannot be done now after the security being settled. I think the government should be put a high contribution in rehabilitated these irrigation projects and other things related to the agriculture.
And I understand that Iraq has obviously been a victim of water wars by competing regional powers that are thirsty for resources. What can you tell us about that?
You know, the Iraqi depends on the two rivers, Euphrates and Tigris, which is coming from Turkey. And according to the published paper by the Ministry of Water Resources, in 2025, after Turkish government's projects, the water flow to Iraq in Tigris going to be only 9 billion cubic meter, where in 2009 it was about 49. That decline in the water flow going to be about 80%. And in Euphrates, in 2009, the water flow was 18 billion cubic meter. This is going to be only 9 billion cubic meter. That means 80% in Tigris going to be reduced, and 15% in the Euphrates also going to be reduced. And one paper published in 2006 mentioned that maybe in 2040, the Tigris and the Euphrates going to be drained. This is disaster facing Iraqi next 10 years or less than 10 years. And the population will be increased from 36 million to 44 million in 2025. That means the total need of the wheat will going to be increased from 5 million, about 92% of the water in the rivers and the lake. That means in this water flow now about nearly 60 or 70 billion cubic meter, we are not able to from the wheat. How about our population going to be increased to 45 to 44 millions, and the need about 8 millions, and the reduction in the water flow about 80%. It is disaster. It is a huge risk facing the Iraqi lives in the next coming 10 years. And this should be the government take a lot of measurement to protect their people while we have very good oil revenue. Should be the oil revenue now being used to how get to get over of this problem. And actually, I wrote a study, and I sent it to the Minister of Agriculture with several suggestions on how to get overcome of this problem, and how we can get to produce the 8 million tons of wheat. There is no response to this, and nobody actually even talking about this coming disaster in near future facing Iraqis.
And we're running out of time, unfortunately, but thank you so much, Dr. Altameemi, expert on Iraq's agriculture industry. Thank you so much.